That can be a long story, but in essence, when I was 12, I was a budding ornithologist and I studied bird nesting habits. And once I stumbled upon this beautiful clump of moss under little acacia trees, and a very rare bird was nesting. And it was epiphany for me. So I tried recreating this moss in my parents' garden, trying to lure the bird into, to our house. And it didn't work, but I was astounded by how difficult it was to get this moss to grow. And it was unattended in the wilderness with a lot of sunlight and wind and drought that it had to cope with. And it really planted a seed, and I tried getting it to grow as a high school kid as well, never really got there. And I also tried putting rocks around it. And I was always struck by how unnatural my stones would look. It never had that sort of beautiful flow that I would see. I could see there's something wrong, but I couldn't make it look like a natural thing. So many years later, when I had a chance to go to Japan, I thought this is it, because I knew a little bit about Japanese gardens. And I went there as a neurology student, but I was planning on spending weekends in the gardens, to look at how they do what I'm trying to do. But when I arrived there, they have a history of more than 1,500 years of moss gardens. And I realized I'm trying to do what they are doing. And they've been doing it for a very long time. In fact, it's the only country in the world where moss was used as a garden material. So they originally used it to prevent soil erosion. But of course, it's so beautiful that it is definitely going to charm you into using it in all kinds of places. And it's not like a lawn that you have to mow. It's sort of a permanent green surface that you add to a garden. So we had a 2-year hiatus with lockdown, and everybody's glad that we can finally get back to the Rare Plant Fair, which is one of two annual opportunities for the public to not only visit the restaurant and the delicatessen at Tokara, but to actually go into the private farm area and the residence of the owners, and to be able to walk through their private gardens. So it's an event where you can also, of course, come and buy very interesting plants from the vendors who you can see online, on the Tokara site. But we are still adding more of the vendors, so it's not the final list. But so there's the interesting plants that from many different nurseries you can have a look at in one single place. And of course, they will be preparing all kinds of wonderful comfort food. But I think the highlight is being able to walk through the private gardens of Tokara, which you can also do only in October during the Stellenbosch Garden Festival. So it's one of 2 annual events where you get that chance. And Tokara, which always strikes me at this estate, is how hilly it is. So there's a lot of up and down. Wear comfortable shoes, but you can anticipate a very dramatic, nearly theatrical backdrop to all of the things you will see there. Well, I'm not going to call any names because we want to give everybody participating a fair exposure. But I think first and foremost, when you arrive, you pay an entrance fee. It's 50 Rand for adults, and kids under 10 go free. But this money is donated then to a charity that protects vulnerable workers on a farm, creating a very safe working environment for these participants. So first of all, you are doing a very good deed by attending the fair. And then I think what is really special is the fact that you will see plants that usually, if you were to see it in the wilderness, you will have to take arduous walks to get to see it. And then, of course, it would be illegal to collect plants such as these from the wilderness. But here you will be able to see a wide variety from licensed vendors where you can legally obtain a beautiful focus object and indigenous plant. So, especially in lockdown, it would be very nice to add a special touch like that to your living environment, because a lot of us stay indoors or in our houses, around our houses, more than we used to. So I think that is, without letting out too many names, I think that is something you can really look forward to. Yes. So when I first met my client at Tokara, they had a problem area in the middle of their beautiful garden paradise, and it was an old tennis court. So when they heard about the moss gardens, they were quite interested. And actually, what I can show you here is a small sort of a demonstration version, a micro moss garden. There you go. So if I bring it closer to the camera, you can see the little star-like tufts of moss in between the rocks. You can see that actually, if you just look at the scene, if my face wasn't in the way, you might actually not really grasp the scale of what you're looking at, because it could look like big mountain scenery. The whole idea with this small tray garden is that it's made only from very locally sourced material. So the mosses, the stones, everything used here is from the immediate area surrounding Tokara. And that's also an aim with this Japanese moss garden, even though the inspiration draws on the classical techniques and styles of how you combine natural materials. It's all taken from the immediate vicinity. And also, you may know that a lot of our fynbos species, as beautiful as they are, they're also very difficult plants to grow. Or I would rather say that is the common perception. Also with mosses, that they need a lot of water, they need to grow in the shade, and they have to be pampered a lot. So putting the rare in the rare plant fair with this is the idea that you're bringing a lot of what look like difficult indigenous species to use in a garden, and you're building up a very complex ecology, but in such a way that it's relatively low, relatively low maintenance. So that I think for me, the aim is really to inspire younger people to see our natural heritage through a new lens, and to realize how extremely beautiful all the plants and stones that we have around us actually are. So I want them never to walk in the mountains again without seeing it as a garden, and to know that it's possible to make a garden out of that, that it's not just for some specialist in a botanical garden in a hothouse to be able to have specimens of these species to enjoy. Then there's, of course, also the Japanese aesthetics. So I think, they have had more than a millennium to adapt Indian and Chinese gardens into their own style, bring their own sensibility to it. And I think it's a good time, the Japanese garden had a diaspora through Europe and the United States and elsewhere, but it's time that this genre properly arrives in South Africa, and that it can hopefully inspire landscapers to, go to the next level and not be just satisfied with what we already have. Because using our own materials in this way, I believe, can create a new idiom of thinking about what the South African landscape looks like, how you bring it into your living environment, and the quality of the finishes that you want to bring to that. And then also, of course, the scientific understanding at whichever level, but to be able to grow those plants as if they were part of the normal, garden plant repertoire.